All right, so welcome back to your second day of our lecture and discussions on the ethical corporate reporting. So yesterday we talked about a very macro thing, right? We talked about the laws, regulations at the national level. But today we are going to the micro level. We are going to analyze some examples on how companies actually implement their ESG reporting in their reports. Okay, so today we are going to delve deeper into the standards and frameworks of ESG reporting itself. So let's cover a bit of review of what we learned yesterday. So in the 80s, the world saw a lot of environmental disaster related to corporate misconduct. Okay, for example, the oil spill and the explosion at the Russia, Chernobyl. Therefore, in these early days, the ESG reporting was concentrated on environmentally sensitive industries. Okay? For example, oil and gas, mining, pulp, and paper and chemical. And that continues until early 90s. And another characteristics of this reporting on ESGs, they are all voluntarily, okay? Because there was no pressures from stakeholders to require corporations to regulate them. So towards the early 1990s, this is the statistics, okay? Only 1/3 of the largest 250 companies voluntarily publish information related to their non-financial informations. And this is the situation, right? However, we have other side of the discussions. Although the companies did not voluntarily disclose this information in their reports, they have to comply with this environmental law. Okay, so if they did not, then they have to face some fines or penalties. So we see this kind of gap. All right. In one hand, companies are required to follow this environmental law. Okay, but they did not disclose it. Okay, so we have these two kinds of gap. So why? What's the reason for that? Okay, why did the companies behind the door they have to comply with these very complex environmental regulations, but they did not disclose it in their financial statements? Okay, could anyone try to guess what's the cause of this gap? The key here is on the report itself. Okay, so annual reports by its nature are constrained with the content, okay, and the standards that regulate it. So annual reports have to comply with accounting standards, okay. Therefore, we see this gap between shareholders versus stakeholders, which we discussed yesterday. By its nature, conventional annual report have several principles and practices that did not make it suitable for reporting non-financial information. Okay, so give two examples. First, entity assumptions, externalities. So that's the definition of externalities. Because the conventional accounting standards follow the principles of recognizing the entity that reports it as the only relevant information that should be measured, any externalities are ignored. Okay? So this term might be new for some of you. Could you come up with some examples of externalities? What are these? What are some externalities that could not be reported because affect the companies? What are some examples of externalities that is not reported in conventional annual report? Because it did not affect the companies directly. We talk about the one environmental item that was required to be disclosed yesterday. You want to try? Emission on? What are some examples of externalities? It's the pollutions, okay? Pollutions emitted companies. Does the emissions affected only the companies? No, okay? It affects other stakeholders, but it doesn't exclusively affect this entity. Therefore, it's not reported in the financial statements, okay? This is the one assumption that limits the amount of information could be disclosed. Second one is the measurement criteria, okay? So just like we discussed yesterday, there will be a lot more information that need to be disclosed in ESG reporting, okay? So not just numbers that are reflected by monetary value like dollars or yen or euros. So a lot of these informations are qualitative in nature and difficult to measure. So the strict recognition criteria that exist in accounting standards prevent it to be reported, okay? So in order to overcome these challenges, the standard itself has to change, okay? So that's the motivation behind the development of a new reporting standards for ESG reporting. Okay, so let's continue with another statistic here. So here are the survey results on the gap between the perceptions on the usefulness of ESG and whether the companies did actually consider it in their business or not. So in the top, we see that the majority of companies, okay, so the survey just surveyed companies in Asia Pacific, consider that ESG is important. Is that correct? 58%, more than half, right? The majority. But did they actually consider it just in their strategy? They just mentioned it, or did they actually consider it important in their operations? So this is the second question. Did they develop KPIs for ESG performance? Okay, only half of them did. Okay, almost half of those 58%. Okay, what are KPIs? What are KPIs? Key performance indicators. Yes. Okay, so you can see the gap here, right? 60%, almost 60% said yes, ESG is important. But when you ask another questions, did you consider ESG in your KPIs? Only 30% said so. Okay, so we see this gap. And this is what that needs to be addressed, okay, in order for corporate ESG reporting to be effective. So, therefore, then there's a lot of needs and motivation to develop a clearer standards to help the companies implement what's needed to be reported. So let's go over this list. So I believe everyone here knows IFRS, okay? So IFRS now are not just interested in developing standards in financial accounting or financial reporting. So they have also started developing standards on sustainability reporting. Actually, last week, IFRS just published the first 2 standards on sustainability reporting, okay? So in the future, you should expect IFRS to be involved in this development of sustainability reporting standards. So here you can see the list of benefits of the sustainable reporting classified by stakeholders. Okay, so let's just quickly cover some of them. So first, the investors, of course, that's the still main users of reports. Okay, doesn't matter whether it's financial or sustainability. Then private sectors here refers to the consumers. Okay, banks. As we discussed yesterday, one of the main motivating regulations is the significant growth of financial funds of finance products that relates to sustainability. Okay? Therefore, central banks are very much involved in this issue as well. Market regulators, of course. Okay, SEC, for example, in US, now they try to expand and consider the standards related to sustainability reporting, not just on the financials. Government, right? Audit firms. So why they are important part of these discussions? Because of the assurance side of the reporting we talked about yesterday. Okay? So audit firms will be very involved in terms of developing the standards related to assurance, and they will be the one who will be hired by a corporation to audit their sustainability reports later. Okay? Employees, trade unions, and consumers. Okay, let's go back. Here. Consumers. And as students and future future careers, if you are considering future careers in the business and financial sectors, you probably will take some interest in sustainability reporting as well. Okay? Okay, so let's go over the examples of these standards and frameworks. Okay, first we are going to show you the first three, and then we'll cover some others that's well known. And for each of these standards and frameworks, I'll show you example of one or two companies and how did they apply it. So first is the Global Reporting Initiative, GRI. Okay. Second, integrated reporting. And third is Sustainability Accounting Standard Boards, SASB. Again, this is not a complete list. Okay. This is just three of the most well-known. If you look further, there could be dozens of it. Okay. So this is a very exciting times in which we see many bodies, independent bodies, comes up with their own version of sustainability reporting standards. And as we go further to each of them, we're going to see that they are not exactly the same. Okay, they cover slightly different aspects of sustainability reporting. They focus on different type of users. Okay, so let's start from the first one, GRI. Compared to the other standards, this is the one that's most well known and the oldest one. Okay, so you can say this is the most mature standards compared to the others. As shown by the statistics, almost 2/3 of the top 100 companies surveyed, they use this standard. Okay, not just in particular countries, but in the world. Okay, 3/4 of the 250 largest companies in the world use GRI. When did these standards develop? It was first published in 2000. Okay, so as you can see, today is 2023, so it's been 23 years since this standard was developed. And it has go through several types of revisions. Okay, and what does it cover? So if we look at this part, it covers the social, environmental, and economics, the ESG criteria that we expect. Hmm. So, what does this standard cover? You can see here, it covers the valuation, assessment, and the measurement. So the goal of this standard is to standardize the way companies disclose this ESG information. So we're going to see how did the standards do this. Okay? So this is the overall structure of the standards. On the right side, we have the principle, you can say, the universal standard. So this applies to all companies that want to apply GRI. Okay? And then in the middle, we have sectors. Sectors here refers to industry. So each industry will have its specific standards on what kind of information the company should disclose, right? And the final one, topics. Topics refers to what kind of specific items within each sector that companies should disclose. So this is how it looks. Okay. So we can see on the left, the first three standards, 1, 2, 3, those are the general standards, okay, shown here. And then sector standards. So far, GRI are only concerned about one specific sector, okay, which is what sector? GRI 11. Oil and gas, right? It's over there. GRI 11. Yeah, after 1, 2, 3, we have 11. So GRI so far hasn't considered other industry, okay? Only one. They pay special attention to oil and gas. And then most of the GRI standards revolve around the topics, okay? So topics here refers to specific accounts or information that should be disclosed. So you can see here we have 201 finishing until 403. Okay, please take a look at these topics from 2. Did anyone notice some patterns here? From 201 to 403. What kind of pattern that you notice? Try to look at the first digit. Is there any patterns, commonalities that you observe? Okay. So try to look at this topic based GRI. Did you notice any pattern? Or is it just random list? Okay. Yes. Right. Okay. Okay, good. Right. Right, exactly. So if we look at the first digit of the sector standards, this the economic indicators, right? And then the topics that start with the first digit of 3 is about the environment. Okay? Then last 3, social. Okay? So here you can see the view or principle of GRI. It seems like they are focused more on the economic and environmental indicators. Okay, that's their focus on these standards. Social aspects, 3 out of the topics related standards. Okay, so now let's look how does real companies disclose these informations. Okay, everyone knows about this company. What company is this? Right, good. Transportations. The name of the company is Toyota. So this is the the reports from the global Toyota financial results. Okay, so you could check this link, and here you can see how they apply those standards. So organization profile 102. What is 102? As we discussed before, 102 is related to still this part, right? We start with digit 1. So foundations or basic information on the organizations. Okay, so if you scroll through these pages, they will disclose all of these individual topics that's relevant for Toyota. Okay. That's an example from one Japanese company. And the second example. What company is this? Right, it's a state-owned enterprise. Okay, the Indonesia is one of the largest state-owned enterprise that operates in oil and gas industry. So they also publish their sustainability report using the GRI standards. Okay, so if you look at the pattern here, okay, how does it organize? We have a table, okay, for sure, and then we have the standards that are required by the GRI itself, okay? So we start from the 102, and here's the individual item. And in this page, does the company directly inform us about, for example, the name of organizations? Did they do that? No, okay? So this standards works like, just like the name suggests here, it's an index, okay? So if you want to look at the information, you have to refer to the main reports, okay? What pages could you find this information? And if we look back to this page, could you check similarities between these two? Okay. Now that you have these 2 pages side by side, is it now easier for you to compare the sustainable performance between these 2 companies? Right. Because now, just from the first page alone, you can see the requirements are the same. Okay. 102, 1 until 102, 11. Then if you go to this one, it provides the same information. Okay. So this is the clear benefits of the GRI standards. By using this index page, investors or readers of the report could easily compare and refer to the same information, even compare 2 different companies in 2 different industries. Okay. Right. Next, the integrated report. So integrated report was developed by an organization called IRC, International Integrated Reporting Council, and it was formed in 2010. So slightly newer standards compared to GRI. Okay, but it has gained some track in some companies and countries. And what makes it differ to GRI? This is the part that makes it differ. The emphasis on disclosing all the information in single report and the emphasis on value. Okay. So compared to GRI, which was pretty simple and straightforward, okay, I believe everyone without any knowledge of business could easily use GRI. But integrated reporting has a more strategic focus. Okay. I'll give you an example. So this is the overall framework on how the integrated reporting is presented. Okay. This framework looks complicated, right? But if we look at the main big parts, there are three things we can classify it with. So let's do this. All right. It has three parts. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So please take a look. What are things in the first part? How do you classify that? Part number 1. What are those? Okay. The whole small boxes on the left. Yes? Yep. Inputs. Okay. And then what's in the middle? What does it represent? Is the process? Yes. Process that happens within the company itself. Okay. And then on the right, we have the output. Okay. So that's the basic principles behind integrated reporting. So let's see how does companies apply this. Okay. Is an example of integrated reporting. Again, if you want to see the full report, you can check this link. This is a company called JAL. Okay, anyone know what company is this? JAL? Yeah, Japanese Airlines. Okay, Japan Airlines, more accurately. So it's an airline, one of the biggest airline in Japan. And let's explore the parts here. So here, again, it consists of 3 groups. So here on the left, these are the okay. These are all the resources that are owned by the companies. Okay? You can kind of identify the name. Human capital, what else? Intellectual capital, social capital, production, financial, and natural capital. Okay? These are the sources or the input that goes into the company's business process and strategies. Okay? So, what kind of operation results that the companies produce? What kind of services it produces? And these are all affected by strategies. Okay? Here, you see the bottom, the keyword or emphasis of integrated report is all about value creation. Okay? And then, what are the output? The output here, one of the major part is the sustainability. Okay? So this is how integrated reporting is presented. So it's not just a page of index, okay, that refers to which page of information that we want. This is a more involved type of reporting. So companies who want to implement integrated report have to consider not just the report itself, but how does it link with the company's overall mission, okay, input, strategies, and operations. So you can say this is a more involved type of sustainability report that aims to synergize what the companies do and the sustainability goals. And if you look at these boxes, I believe some of you are familiar with this. What are these? UN SDGs. So the output itself could be linked to individual SDG items, which is again could be classified into 4 groups: right? Environment, people, communities, and governance. Okay. So if you notice, this report is published in 2020. Okay. So a lot of major companies has applied this sustainable reporting for quite some time. And if you look over not just the annual report, you are going to start to see this kind of information being presented by the companies. Again, this is just a big overview, and in detailed information. Right. What's this? Right, the third one. This one is established near, it's the 2011, 1 year after the integrated reporting. So just like the name suggests, sustainability accounting standard boards. You can kind of guess what's the focus of these standards. Okay. It caters more to the follow similar process as the accounting standards, the conventional one. So the value proposition of this standard is that how could company reported related information to investor in a cost-effective way? Okay. Based on our discussion yesterday, I believe we mentioned the issue of costs for the companies to prepare all those complicated and detailed sustainability information, right? So these standards aim to address that concern. How could the companies disclose this sustainability information in a cost-effective way? So the focus is on simplification, okay? So easy, effective, okay? So let's see how it looks. So first, let's take an overview on how the standard itself are being constructed. So, itself, here. So for those of you in accounting, you might be familiar with this exposure draft. Okay? So if we look at the overall standard setting process for SASB, it follows closely with the standard setting process of a conventional accounting standards. So first they publish a draft, which goes through the public comment period, in which general publics or organizations could comment whether this standard at this stage is good or bad, okay? And then through this process, they're going to go back and forth, review, issue another draft, and then we'll finalize it and go through review again for another loop. So this is how the process looks like. Now let's look at the content of the standards. Okay. So this is the description of their standards. Their term is they classify standards based on industry and sectors. Okay. We already discussed about GRI, right? How many standard or sectors they discuss contained in their standards? How many? Only one, right? Oil and gas. For SSB, they have come up with standards for 77 industry across 11 sectors. Okay, so they are more detailed in that category. So what are those sectors? What are those industry? These are the list of the sectors and industry that they cover. Okay, so the blue one, those are the sectors. There are 11 of them. And then the industry, 77. Okay. Okay. So now we can see how does each individual standards differ in the focus. Okay. If you look at these sectors, they mostly cover everything from manufacturing, extractive industries, and services. Okay. So how the framework could be applied? So it follows this principle. First, you have to consider what sector your company is operating in. Okay. So let's use this example. Extractive industry. What kind of industry? Oil and gas exploration. What dimensions you want to disclose? Environment. And then within this environment, we have many indicators, right? One of the most common one, GHG. Okay. And then within this GHG disclosure topics, what kind of information about greenhouse emission to disclose according to these standards? And the answer is scope 1 from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? If you look at those items, flared hydrocarbons, other combustion, process emission, vented emissions. This is pretty technical, okay? So those informations are specifically tailored to this oil and gas industry, okay? If you look at this, what are flared hydrocarbons? People outside of oil and gas will not understand this, okay? So these disclosure items are tailored specifically to the industry. So let's go through another examples, okay? Here, I show you the SASB standards for a particular set of industry, okay? So I want you to read this table for a couple of minutes. We have the topic, we have the measure, category. Here, we also have what type of activity that is relevant for the industry. Okay. So the question is, what industry particular standards want to regulate? Okay. Could anyone try to guess what type of industry is this about? Yes? Transportation? Okay. Could we be more specific? Automobiles. Great. So what's the clue here? Yeah. Vehicle. Okay. There's one clue. And then what else? It's not just because we have a lot of vehicles, right? Even plane is vehicle. Train is also vehicle. Some of the clues here, right here, NCAP. Okay, NCAP is also all with cars. Then we have zero emission vehicles. And based on this clue, we know that this is standards that regulates automotive industry. Okay, and this is how Toyota apply these standards. Okay. Again, I'll use the example of Toyota. If we look at the items on the left, let's look at the first three. What does it require here? Product safety, okay? NCAP safety complaints, number of vehicle recalled. Let's look at how Toyota applied it. Is it consistent? Right, right, pretty much, okay? So this is how companies apply these standards in practice. And these individual documents provide the responses from the company, okay? Right, another example. This is for one pretty famous companies in Indonesia, if you notice the website. So what industry will this be about? Right, finance, okay, banking industry. And if we look at the metrics, does it have similarities with the one we saw from Toyota? Is it the same or totally different? It's totally different, right? So SSB want to help the companies simplify their sustainable reporting by specializing and focusing on the industry. So this is quite a bit different compared to GRI, right? Remember when we first, I show you the GRI examples, we have the one from Toyota, and then we have one from the Pertamina, okay? They are exactly the same, okay? So the GRI focus much more on comparability, okay? They want to make stakeholders easier to compare the sustainability information across different companies and industry. But SSB goal is not really about comparability, okay? Their focus is on cost effectiveness and relevance. They want to show what kind of information that's relevant for that industry only, okay? So let's summarize. Okay, so here, the one big table, we can summarize the differences among these three most common sustainability standards, okay? So let's highlight the major differences here. GRI is the most established one and the most popular one. Therefore, we can see that they want to focus, they want to cover the basis for their standards. They want to cover the interests of the largest set of stakeholders, okay? But for integrated reporting, as we can observe from JAL example before, the focus is not stakeholders in general, but investors, okay? Or in other words, our traditional users of financial reports. The same thing could be said for SSB. They still want to focus on the financial markets and investors. So now let's explore some other standards outside of these three. Okay. Next one, TCFD, Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. Okay. So the main difference compared to the previous three, I believe you can guess. What's the biggest difference here? Just from this name, the focus is only about climate, okay, only about environment, okay. The previous three, they want to cover everything, okay. They want to cover the environment, social, and economy or governance. But TCFD focused solely on the climates. So that's the main goal, how the companies could provide relevant information to the investors, all aspects of the operations that could affect climate-related risk. So, you can see from the report by Fiji 2020, only 1 out of the 5 companies so far implement this standard. So this standard is not as popular as previous 3. Okay. So it follows this type of framework for the companies to apply TCFD, and the focus is all about climate. Okay. So let's look at current statistics on the usage of TCFD. Okay. So which part of the world apply this TCFD at the moment? As you can see from those blue part, it's the Europe. Okay. So now I think you can see the link between the frameworks and the law that we discussed yesterday, right? So it kind of goes hand in hand that the EU regulators, they are the one who spearheaded the regulations on ESG reporting, because in Europe itself, most of the companies have started implemented standards related to this climate risk. Then followed by, surprisingly, companies Asia and then North America. And if we look at the statistic of the number of companies that applies TCFD, it's grown quite significantly in the past from 2017 to 2020. However, if we look at what companies or what industries that apply this TCFD, we can see quite a surprising information here. Okay? So, the overwhelming number of companies that apply TCFD, they belongs to the financial sectors. Okay, so this is one standard that you want to pay attention to if you are particularly interested in financial industry. Okay. All right. Okay, let's see another examples of application of TCFD in Toyota. So it covers few main topics: governance and strategy. And within this individual topic, we can connect the items that TCFD recommended. Okay, it's all about climate, and then the companies have to attempt to answer this concern. Okay, and the companies did that using these documents. Okay. All right. Let's continue. As for the statistic of companies that use TCFD, this is for Japanese companies. We can see that more and more companies in Japan are starting to supporting these climate-specific standards. How about Indonesian companies? This is this results. Okay, please take a look on these sectors of Indonesian companies that support TCFD. Okay, did you notice the similar pattern? What type of companies support this standard at this moment? We have 2 others, 1 industrial, and 4 financial companies. Okay, so even in Indonesia, one of the developing markets, we can see that only financial companies, the majority of the financial related organizations that support these standards. Right. Next, UN SDGs, okay? Again, we are not going to cover this, but this is also part of the frameworks that companies could easily use to link their processes, inputs, and outputs to sustainable goals. So this is not exactly rigorous standards, but because of the simplicity, a lot of companies use this in their, you can say, promotion materials and documents that explain their sustainability practices. So overall, because of the simplicity, more and more companies are going to try to integrate these UN SDGs goals in their operations. However, this is not without any concern. Okay? Unlike the other standard we have discussed so far, in which they try to bring the business operations or measures to the sustainability goals, UN SDGs did not have that guidance. Okay? Right. So again, there's some examples from Toyota. Their contributions to the society. Let's go over this. Okay. One concept in the sustainability reporting that you might see goals will be important in the future is materiality. Okay. So this is a concept which I believe some of you who study accounting is familiar with. Okay. So let's go over a bit of this concept. What exactly is material? What does it mean? How do you define if something is material? Yes? Right. It has a huge effect on decision making. Okay? That's what is defined as material. So materiality concept is also important in sustainability reporting. Okay? So let's see how this concept is applied. Okay? So this is the we can say official definitions. If the material information is omitted, then what happened to your decisions? Then you want to change your decision. That's the definition of material decision. Okay? If it's missing from your decision-making process, it will significantly affect the outcome. Okay? So let's see how this concept is applied in sustainability reporting. Okay? So in sustainability reporting, the materiality concept is expressed through this matrix, these 4 boxes. Okay? So this is just one example of this matrix. The materiality is measured using 2 dimensions, the impacts and then relevance to stakeholders. Okay? So let's see how does this concept is applied. Okay, so let's use an example of a report published by Ford Motor Company. Okay. All right. So this is the introduction part of the definition of materiality. So let's explore this content. Okay. First, the time. So I'll use the report from early 2004-5 to show that this concept has been explored pretty well. It's nothing new, okay, in the terms of sustainable reporting. So the companies define materiality pretty much with what we just discussed, right? Here, greatest interest, okay? It could affect the perception of stakeholders. to make decisions. Okay, these are the definition of maturity. And Ford also showed what is the definition of maturity according to GRI. Okay, so this is the introduction part. Okay, now let's continue. This is the actual maturity metrics that Ford disclosed. Okay, so let's spend some time looking at this graph. Okay, so try to look at the left part first. Okay, so let's start with the x and y axis. What is x-axis? What does it refer to? The significance of the sustainability information to the company itself. Okay, how did Ford perceive the importance of this individual item? Okay, we go to the right. What does it mean? According to Ford, that information is important for them. Okay. How about the y-axis? Stakeholders. Okay. As it becomes higher, the more important the relevance of that particular items for stakeholders. Okay. So could you guess what's the ideal situation for these maturity metrics? If we have this type of line, right? Again, it's not perfect. This is the perfect line, okay? 45 degrees line. If all of the items fall within this line, let's see here. What does it mean? If it falls in this line, what does it mean? Okay, could anyone try to interpret this matrix? Let's take a simple example. Air quality, okay? If the air quality falls within those 45 degrees line, what does it mean? Yes?
It has equal importance
Right.
to both the company and
Yeah, excellent. It has equal importance for both Ford and the stakeholders, which is ideal, right? And it doesn't really matter if the importance is high, medium, or slow, okay? As long as it matches, okay? So by using this guideline, we have kind of two groups of circles, right? We have right of the line, and then we have fewer items on the left side of this line. So what does it mean? What does these items on the right lines mean? Okay, anyone try? So far, using this to get rough guidance, we have more things on the right than the left area. Is that correct? Yes. So, could anyone try what does this mean? The right side. How do we interpret these items on the right? Yes? Right. So the perceptions of these items on the right, Ford considered more important for them relative to the stakeholders. Okay? And then it's vice versa on the left. For the items on the left, the stakeholders consider that important relative to Ford. Okay? Good. So this is how we interpret this matrix. Okay? And then we have how many dots? A to S. And within this A to S dots, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories. Okay, we have financial, environment, human, social, and governance. Okay, so let's pick one example. All right, let's pick one on the right. Okay, R. What is R? Ethical business practices. Okay, because it's located on the R side, Ford considered this be more important if to stakeholders. Okay, that's interpreted. Okay, how about one items on the left side? Right, this one. Let's use F here. Okay, F. Climate change resilience, strategy, and energy future. So between Fords and stakeholders, which party considers more important this issue, climate change? Is the stakeholders, okay, compared to Ford. So here we can see is there a gap between the perception of Ford and stakeholders, and what Ford do in the future to reduce this gap. Okay, so that's the goal. And if you ask, how did Ford come up with this matrix? Okay, so they use surveys to select group of stakeholders, okay, to identify the importance of each of these items. Okay. So this is how the concept of materiality is applied in sustainability reporting. Again, the keyword here is the importance. Okay, any questions?
Yes, it's about so importance to stakeholders.
Right.
So when you say stakeholders, basically users or is it the
Part of it. Okay. So again, we have to look deeper on how does Ford define stakeholders. Okay. But customers, employees is of course part of it. Okay. So again, we can see that there's still a lot of questions to be asked. Who are those stakeholders? Okay. Because depending on specific group of stakeholders that you ask, they will come up with different matrix. Okay, so this is just a generalization of whole stakeholders. So again, that could be a point of improvement. It would be great if the companies could come up with matrix for individual groups. For example, customers, employees. Okay, great. So now you learned if you see this kind of matrix in the future, you could understand what does it mean. Okay. All right. Now, one more topic related to assurance, which we talked about a bit yesterday. So, the role of assurance in traditional financial reporting is listed here. Okay? So that's the function of audit, is to provide some assurance that the information disclosed by the company is true and fair. So some assurance, that's the keyword, okay? It's not all assurance or guarantee, okay, just some. So that's the things you have to pay attention to. So this is the state of the sustainable assurance for ESG reporting. This is the statistics. If we look at the global results, it's not bad, right? 2/3 of major international companies have done some assurance to their sustainability reporting. So it's pretty good. But there's still some gap in the applications. So let's go over some of the examples of what kind of standards does auditors use to conduct these assurance services. So in early 2000, there's been no standards related to assurance, But in December 2013, so it's been 10 years, this is the standards that used by auditors to check the assurance of sustainability reporting. Okay, so let's go over this, as I believe this could be pretty technical, so we won't go deeper on that topic. So that's one. It's published by ISB. The other one, here we refer to the AA and AS standards. So these standards are mostly used by the people who audit or provide some assurance services to sustainability reporting. So this is the limitations of current standards on assurance. So first, there's still not a very strong regulations behind it, okay? Therefore, there's still a lot of debate on how and on what is the best practices for auditors, especially audit firms who want to conduct these services. So a lot of these issues are being discussed and hammered out as we speak. So I'll just show you how does a company disclose their assurance for their sustainability reporting. Okay, take a look at this example. I believe everyone is familiar with this company. Okay, so what type of industry does this company engage in? If you want to classify it, it's Danone. What type of industry does this company engage in? Yes? Yeah? Food and beverage, right? Yeah, I think that's a good coverage. So just look at the title of the sustainability report. What standards that you believe they use? Does it use GRI? Doesn't seem so. This is from the table of content. It used the second standard we discussed this morning, right? Integrated report, just from the title, okay? So they apply the integrated report frameworks to make this sustainability report. If we look at some of the tables of contents, right, in the very first few pages, it discusses about materiality, okay? So if you look at most of the ESG reporting by companies, they usually have to discuss the materiality first, the first few sections, okay? Now let's discuss the right, the assurance of Danone's integrated report. Okay. So how did Danone assure the reliability of this report? They have to explain it in this part. Okay. So what name of the company that they hire? Check their sustainability report, in this case, integrated report. This one, right? KPMG audit. And we can see the comments and conclusion within this integrated report. So let's check it. All right. So this is the report that they showed related to the assurance of Danone's IR. Okay. So please take a look. This first pages here. So what's the first here? This first section. It describes that management is responsible ultimately on the content of these information. Okay, so if you look at the format in a glance, it's pretty simple with review or audit report. Okay, you just modify the contents to suit the informations. Okay, but that's not all. Okay, so audit is not just the only way for companies to verify their ESG informations. So this is the external evaluation list that Danone shows in their report. Okay, so they not just use the KPMG, they also proudly show these are other companies that evaluate or verify the information we show in our report. Okay, so as you can see, this is also one of the fastest growing side or aspects of ESG reporting. There are more and more companies that provide services to companies who want to assure that ESG reports. Okay, so if you are interested in consulting services, I believe more and more companies are looking for people who have knowledge in this sector. Okay, all right. So let's summarize. This that we saw so far has many differences, but ultimately the aim is similar, okay? To standardize the way companies disclose the ESG reportings. So the differences mostly depends on who are the main readers. Are they investors versus stakeholders? What are the focus? Is it about the value or the cost? Okay. Do you want to focus on comparability or do you want to focus on industry-specific information? So these are the main differences between and among all the standards we just discussed today. Right. So as we move forward, we can see that this diverse set of standards will eventually consolidate together, okay, in the future. So let's see some of these examples. So as we have mentioned before, IFRS also pays some special attention to the accounting standards related to sustainability. Okay. So as we move forward to the future, all of these multiple standards might become a more universal standards. So this is the most recent definition in the past few years. So IIRC here and SASB deferred the standard 2 and 3 we discussed this morning. So what happened? They already start to consolidate. Okay. So now we have GRI and then the consolidation between integrated reporting and the SSB. So now we have two big standards for standard reporting. So let's take a look at their positioning. Okay, let's watch this video. This is the video that IRC and SSB published a few years ago.
The concepts of sustainability and intangible value have grown in importance in the face of global challenges. Sustainability issues are business issues. When businesses improve sustainability performance, we see enhanced enterprise value and improved sustainability outcomes at scale. It's challenging because it's more complex and fragmented than financial accounting. So we're trying to bring the same degree of clarity to sustainability disclosure. We believe that communicating value and providing sustainability metrics ought to be easier while also improving overall performance. So we've combined the resources of SASB and IIRC to provide a robust tool set for planning and reporting. That tool set includes principles to guide strategic planning by business, a framework to guide external communication, and standards to ensure that investors have consistent and reliable information. Our resources are designed to support better decision-making by businesses and investors, creating a feedback loop and a common language. It's now easier for businesses to communicate long-term strategy and to provide a comprehensive view of corporate performance. Join us as we collectively create a corporate reporting system that supports a sustainable future.
All right, so that's the future, as we can see, as more and more of these standards are going to consolidate. All right, so as we have 10 more minutes, let's go over the few statistics on the application of these sustainable standards in Indonesia and Japan. Okay, let's go through this quickly. So let's take a look at the highlighted part, the red one. So we have numbers on companies who implement GRI from 2005 and 2016. So how does it look for Indonesia? Again, it starts peak pace, let's see, about 2010, right? From 15 to 26, they'll see significant growth. And then by the end of 2016, there's about 55 companies, all right? So 317, considering the small number of listed companies in Indonesia, that's not really bad, okay? And if we use the statistic, but this time for assurance, we can see the gap, okay? If we look at the previous list, there are 370 companies who publishes GRI standards reports, but only 54 of those provide assurance, okay? So there's still a big gap between these two numbers, okay? So, right, this is the main challenges that I believe the state of the current implementation of sustainability frameworks in developing countries. The big gap between the standards itself and the assurance. How about Japan's situations? Let's take a look. So in Japan, we can see that integrated report, that's the most common form in which companies present their ESG reports. Okay, so if you want to look at these ESG reports from Japanese companies, you could get a better chance finding data if you use the title integrated report, okay, in case of Japan. Right, and then as for how popular is the company's popularity of integrated report in Japanese companies, we can see the statistics in terms of the total companies, still not that bad, not good. Only 1/4 of all listed companies publish integrated report. And the good thing is, among all of these 24 companies who publish the report, they represent the biggest companies in the market. Okay, so here you can check in more details later what type of industries that publishes integrated reports. And we see that it's not uniform across the industry. Okay, if we look at on the left side, what type of companies publish integrated reports? Is it financial companies? No, right? These are companies that deals mostly manufacturing, okay, and chemical. Banking, it's not bad. It's the 4th largest industries that publish integrated reports. But integrated report is not just limited to environment, okay? Could anyone guess what's the picture about? Right, overwork. So these are still some of the aspects of, we can say, non-financial reporting that has not really been touched, okay? Because most of the standards and framework we see so far focus more on the environmental and economic side, okay? So there's still room of growth for disclosure on the social issues that affects the community, okay? For example, in case of Japan, like overwork, okay? It has a significant importance to the society, but it has not been really touched by any of the standards or framework we see so far. So that's the room of improvement, okay? The social part of the information. Okay, if you look at the statistics for the GRI implementations, again, it's much higher because of the number of listed companies in Japan. And however, look at the difference between the assurance versus the number of companies that publish GRI, same problem, right? There's a big gap between these two. So here we can see similarities between Indonesia and Japan. They still have problems having a gap between companies that disclose ESG and companies that assure those ESG information. Okay, as shown here. In 2011, almost all companies in Japan have CSR report, but only 23% assure those information, which is very different compared to EU countries, even in 2011. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's conclude the overall discussion lecture we have in these 2 days. So if you want to consider what are the future trends regarding the ESG reporting, we can say that it's not going to slow down, okay? Instead, you're going to become more common and mainstream. You might not learn it now in your textbook or lecture, but you can expect to see it or observe it when you are in the workforce in the future, okay? So I think now is a good time. If you're interested in this aspect of ethical reporting, if you are studying accounting, finance, or even general management, this discussion about sustainability will come up sooner or later, okay? So future global trend, again, climate change still in everyone's mind, and then DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, that's going to become more sensitive issue again, probably in some countries more than the others. So how does companies navigate this sensitive issue of DEI, okay? Because you do one thing in one country, people support you. You do the same thing in another country, you get boycotted. So how do you navigate these issues? And then the convergence or consolidations of diverse standards we've seen today. Okay, it's going to happen more and more in the future. So probably GRI will convert. It is a possibility. Okay? And then the relevance of ESG information, even for finance field, in the finance field and capital market. Right. And 6, few who experience virtual learning, okay, by Zoom. So more and more board or shareholders meeting are now conducted online. This is one trend we haven't seen before, okay? Before 2020, almost nobody did board or shareholders meeting online. But more and more companies are embracing that going forwards. All right, so let's conclude. What should we be looking forward? The more mainstream application of the ESG reporting standards in normal business, and then in the end is still remain the same. Why do we need this information? Because now market, the investor, consider this information as part of the decision making more now compared to the past that we've seen so far. All right, so thank you for your attention. So before we finish, do you have any questions for the topics that we discussed in the past few days? So we still have a couple of minutes before we finish. Any questions? So, what are your things that you learned in these 2 days of lecture, if there's no questions? Anything new insight or something changed in your mind after these 2 lectures? Yes?
Well, in this today's in today's lecture, I think I have learned about actually there are some regulation that is very important, and it is created by and I think we should be more global to create this regulation, and I believe in the near future we can create more globally.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's one keyword, the globalizations. But then the globalization doesn't mean just one way, okay? There are divergent way in which different regions tackle this issue. So we're going to see the future and be pretty exciting. Yes? Yes.
What do you think of sweatshop factory? Like which regulation that should they follow? The company's regulation or the country's regulation that they are?
Right. So the question of sweatshop again, this the people of social aspect of ESG reporting. As we can see, yesterday we talked about some industry that are pretty sensitive on the issue, like fast fashion, right? So companies has disclosed that information, that's for sure, right? They voluntarily tell they use some suppliers or factories that don't use sweat labors. But then the question is, could we trust that? Could we trust the information that the management gave? Okay, that's where the regulation will comes in. So hopefully in the future, we will have a more robust way to verify that information. Okay, so we should not just trust the management's what they say, because that's what's currently happening. Okay, so the future is more about the assurance. How could the readers of the information trust that what the management is saying reflect the reality? Okay, thank you. All right, so thank you very much for your time. So I hope you learn a lot during these 2 days, and please enjoy the rest of your summer week.